Good evening, everyone. We would like to call the September 8th, 2020 regular board meeting for the Richland School District 2 Board of Trustees. And we have some items that we must discuss in the executive session. So I will entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Shad,
Dr. Parker.
I move that we convene executive session for the purpose of discussing student admission requests into the district adult education program, breach of contract, and a personnel matter update.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded also by Ms. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote on your devices, or if you don't, please do a hand vote.
The vote is 7-0.
Thank you. The motion carries, and now we will go into executive session. Good evening, everyone. Is there a motion for us to come out of executive session at this time?
Mr. Shad,
Mrs. Mackey?
I move that to let the record reflect that we ended executive session at approximately 5:15 p.m.
And your motion is for us to come out of executive session?
And my motion is and to continue us to come out of executive session and convene public session, Mr. Shad.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Holmes. Please register your vote.
Are you able to vote, Dr. Elkins Johnson? The vote is 7-0.
Thank you. The motion carries. Um, Again, good evening, everyone. We went into executive session at 4:30 p.m. where we discussed student admission requests into the district's adult education program, breach of contract, as well as a personal matter update. And now we will move to item 3.1, inspirational moment and the Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I share a brief video with our viewing audience this evening, I'd like to say to our superintendent, to our executive staff, principals, assistant principals, administrators, teachers, counselors, administrative assistants, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, teachers' aides, resource officers, coaches, volunteers, PTSO members, SIC members, booster club members, parents, supportive community members, and all who play an integral part into the education of a child in Richland 2. I want to thank you. There is a stark difference between being the best in the world and in between being the best for the world. I appreciate all of your efforts at being the best in the world. And Ms. Ruth, if you'd start the video, I'd be ever so grateful. Thank you.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me, though, was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen and focus and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, hey, stop tapping. A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, Clint, you have to stop tapping. It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands. So I did. I went back to class, and when I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds.
We can't hear the video anymore.
One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, he looked at me, and he yelled. And he said, Clint, stay after class. And I thought to myself, this is it.
Actually, it's still playing on the live stream. It's not playing for us.
Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's
With the
life.
audio, Ms. Manning?
And this was one of those moments
Oh,
for me.
great.
And I will never forget it. And so I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom.
Yes.
And he walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, Clint, come here. I want to talk to you. And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, now, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you. And he asked, he said, have you ever thought about playing the drums? And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer. From that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, and played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time when somebody believed in me and he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
But for those who couldn't see the video, it's Be a Mr. Jensen. Just Google Be a Mr. Jensen. It's about a little boy who was tapping and tapping and tapping all the time in class and stayed in trouble because he couldn't sit still. Stayed in the principal's office and it always was in trouble and was discouraged in school until a teacher identified that you may just be a percussionist. Gave him a set of drumsticks and he is now a professional drummer and he still taps all the time when he's going along. And he encouraged people not to be the best in the world, but encourage other people to be the best of the world. So thank you for playing that for us, Ms. Ruth. And if you all would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
And if you'll give me just a minute, let me get the flag up there for
Not
you.
a problem. Not a problem. Hope everyone's doing well this evening. I'll just give you a little space filler there, Libby.
Are you going to play any drums?
I'm not going to tap. I'm not a gifted percussionist.
The flag is showing now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Ruth. If you all would please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Thank you, Ms. Ruth.
You're welcome. I am working on my...
All right. And in the meantime, we will move to item 4.1, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Manning?
I make the motion that we approve the agenda for the September 8th, 2020 regularly scheduled board meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Mrs. Mackey. Thank you, Mr. Manning. Mrs. Mackey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote.
The vote is 6-1.
Thank you. The motion carries. Now, item 5, the consent agenda. May I have a
Mr.
motion?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey,
I move to approve the consent agenda for September 8th, 2020.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Agostini. Thank you both. Any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote.
Are you able to vote, Dr. Elkins? There she goes. Okay, the vote is 7-0.
Thank you. The motion carries. Now to item 6.1, public participation. Mrs. Libby Roof from Communications Department will share the public's participation by email.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We received 24 submissions on our public participation form. As is practice with our regular board meetings, we do not answer questions during public participation. I will simply read the comments. I have tested this, and with the 24, it takes me more than 15 minutes to get through them, so we'll read half now, and we will do the other half in the second public participation, which is also in line with our practices for our board meetings. I'll begin with our first one. My name is Chris Resegno, and I'm the parent of a senior at Spring Valley High School. My biggest concern with virtual learning is screen time and the effect on mental health. At a school like Spring Valley High with up to 9 periods counting an early bird, I am hopeful that all teachers will be looking at quality over quantity when it comes to homework. My daughter will be in 5 courses, spending 4 to 5 hours online for class. I realize homework is necessary, but even 30 minutes for 5 classes is an additional 2.5 hours of screen time. How much more screen time should we expect for homework? Is this something that has been discussed amongst teachers, and has an expectation been set? Our next submission is from Christina Jones. I think it's ridiculous to expect parents to pay insurance fees on devices students have used in the classroom with no prior insurance fee expectations. We didn't choose to homeschool our children or do e-learning. This was forced upon us and has resulted in parents having to quit working because they have to now stay home for their children's schooling. We have forced loss of income and now fees to pay for that forced decision. David Taylor. Dear Richland 2 Trustees, my daughter Lily with significant special needs requires in-person instruction to have an appropriate education. She lights up in person but is unresponsive to virtual learning. She has a visual impairment, speech impairment, physical disability, and severe cognitive delay. This past week, school boards across the nation who are in virtual only for general education have begun opening their buildings for kids like Lily because they realize in-person instruction is the only way to offer appropriate education for some children. Newark, Fairbanks, and even our own Beaufort County District made the news for allowing their most at-risk kids back into the classroom. District leaders outlined how some children cannot receive an appropriate education through virtual learning. In California, the governor and state superintendent came out with a statement of how all districts can and should open in person for children with acute needs, even in areas with high COVID rates. Opening schools for face-to-face instruction for kids with special needs is a new trend that merges the latest COVID data with the responsibility to uphold the free and appropriate education to all students. Please use your elected authority to make a motion for in-person instruction for these most at-risk kids. This upholds civil and educational rights for the kids in your district. This protects these Richland 2 children from discrimination. This is simply the right thing to do. Please be the school board member to stand up for us. Gratefully, David Taylor. Glenn O'Neill. Hello, Richland 2 board. We have tried to take the proper courses of action since March, and now we are left with no other option. I can't believe I am even having to write this. I can't believe I'm having to prove what is right and what is true. I can't believe we are being discriminated upon by Richland 2. I can't believe Eliza's team at school wrote up a report with admitted inaccurate data and omissions based on 3 virtual days and a brand new teacher, and is using this report to justify that virtual learning is somehow appropriate for my daughter. It is not. The facts are that Richland 2 refuses to provide appropriate education to my special needs daughter, Eliza. My daughter is age 10. She is nonverbal with significant disabilities caused by a degenerative brain disease called Sanfilippo syndrome. With in-person teaching, she can engage, learn, and maintain certain skills longer. In the past months, we have been asking for what the plan will be for Eliza come fall. Virtual sessions have proved to be useless for my daughter. My daughter Eliza's brain does not work in the same way as a normal child. She will not attend to virtual sessions as the damage to her central nervous system causes her to not sit in front of a screen and engage with others on the other end, nor does she understand this. The only way to connect with her is to get down to her level in person and work with her on different tasks. We can no longer allow my daughter to not obtain what is her legal right, a free and appropriate public education. From the 3 virtual days that my daughter tried to attend, approximately half of the sessions she missed as we were not able to wrangle her into the room and chair. She does not take directions and is not engaged by a screen with someone trying to teach. Therefore, she missed the sessions. On those we were able to physically try to hold her, she would flail about, scream, and get out of the chair and room approximately 20 plus times for a 10-minute session. Somehow, some way, because my daughter glanced at the screen a few times, they deemed that she was making some type of progress. It's insulting, it's common sense that this is not helpful to Eliza, and I could argue it's actually detrimental to her. I have decided to teach Eliza in person until a solution is found. There are options the school system could implement in these special instances for in-person training. In fact, they must legally, using Beaufort school system as an example. With respect to the people who have worked with Eliza, the school, and the district, not allowing in-person teaching for her is unconscionable. For my daughter, virtual learning is akin to no learning, and it is not appropriate. Further, it is illegal, it is hurtful, it is discriminatory, and it is wrong. I asked the board if it were your child, what would you do? Would you accept no learning for your child, or would you stand up? Thank you, Glenn. Stephanie Patterson. Dear Richland 2 board members, I am writing to express my concern regarding virtual learning for children with special needs. My son Blake has apraxia of speech, which is a significant speech delay accompanied with cognitive delays. For the last several years, he has been in a multi-categorical class at Lake Carolina Elementary Lower. He has made significant progress in this setting and thrives in the classroom with his teachers and his peers. As you can imagine, since March, there have been many setbacks, not only in his learning and educational development, but socially as well. We went through the virtual learning last week with an optimistic mind and gave it our best shot. The teachers have done a tremendous job in trying to facilitate this type of learning. However, this is not the way for children with special needs and/or IEPs to learn. It is hard for special needs children to focus and give their full attention through a computer. I could go on regarding the specifics that distract their attention to this platform, but that's not the purpose of this email. This option is only setting them back farther, and it's extremely frustrating and disappointing that our district has not allowed children with special needs to be in person. As you know, there are many other school districts in South Carolina as well as the country who have an in-person option for special needs kids, and most of these districts are in areas where COVID-19 cases have been higher than Richland County. I urge you to reconsider an in-person option for our children. Special needs children need face-to-face instruction. I understand the safety aspect of this, but if other districts can do it safely, there is no excuse that it can't be done in Richland too. The future of our children depends on this, and they deserve this option. Thank you for your consideration, Stephanie Patterson. Kimberly Toogood. Please start looking at our schools individually to determine if reopening is a good fit for each building. With the behavior of the citizens who aren't even close to our school here in the 29229 area, I'm worried we will not see a return to phase 2. With so many families choosing the virtual option, can we not reopen our schools to safely accommodate those who wish to return? Virtual families have been accommodated. Our children need face-to-face instruction. Teresa Wallace. Richland County's data was trending in a favorable direction in August. Low trend in incident rate and decreasing incident rate and percent positive up until USC opened and cases began proliferating there. It seems unfair and unreasonable that poor decisions made by university students should affect the educational opportunities of our K-12 students. I would request that the Richland 2 School Board reconsider using Richland County data as the basis for making the decision of when phase 2 can start. Possibly you can use data by zip codes in Northeast Columbia instead. This would remove USC, which is physically far separated from the majority of Richland School District 2 schools, as an influence on our students' opportunities. Thank you. Elizabeth Adams. Please exclude USC COVID data and consider other factors when determining when we can safely move into the hybrid model. Other neighboring districts have returned safely to an in-person option. Our students and families who also wish to return also deserve this option. I also believe the harm of virtually teaching young elementary is far outweighing the possible risk of returning. Young children are being left home alone or with other siblings. Teachers can effectively teach virtually with younger age children. This virus has a 98% recovery rate. Is enough? Open the schools. Melissa Braminet. I am a registered nurse and a mom to a third grader at Lake Carolina Elementary. It is time for these kids to return to the classroom. The data does not support the continuation of virtual learning for healthy children. The data shows that children rarely transmit the virus to adults. The psychological implications of continuing virtual school outweigh the benefits of classroom instruction. Enough is enough. Stop teaching our children to live in fear. Do not bring current political and social issues into the curriculum either. Let our kids be kids. Jennifer Fleetwood. I'm a mom of 3, a registered voter, an educator, and advocate for public schools. Today, my first grader and kindergartner began virtual education in Richland School District 2. They were excited to start school. We prepared early and have struggled through internet issues, learning a mouse, figuring out where to click, and how to log in their classrooms. I have watched my friends decide to homeschool or go to a private school in the wake of COVID school closures. I taught for 10 years in a public school system, and I am a firm believer that public education is quality education. I have taught with some of the best, most hardworking, and dedicated individuals in public schools. Through the last week, I observed our school administration and my teachers doing their very best to make this a workable situation. I am sure I do not have to explain that it is so developmentally inappropriate for our young children to be glued to a screen. I don't need to explain that young children crave connection and social interaction. My kindergartner cried today because she was so excited to tell her new classmates that she lost a tooth. Instead, she sat and saw videos and held thumbs up and thumbs down. My first grader was thrilled to tell his friends from last year what he did over the summer. Instead, he drew a picture of it and held it up to a laptop screen. As an early childhood educator, I understand that the formative years of school are what shapes a child's attitudes, enthusiasm, and beliefs about education for the rest of their educational career. We abruptly ended their school year last year without any closure or goodbyes to their friends and teachers. We have delayed the start of this school year, and now we are virtual with no answers on when or if a return to school is possible. For the youngest learners who thrive on consistency and routine, this has certainly been detrimental. My heart is breaking today for my kids and all the other kids I saw in their classrooms today. We made the decision to try virtual school because we love our neighborhood school, the families, the teachers, and the community that they have fostered there. However, I know that this mode of learning is not in the best interest of my kids or any kids in the primary grades. We have been out of school for 5 months. The measures we have taken to combat a largely survivable virus has been extraordinary. I cannot imagine the learning gains that have been lost in this time or that will continue to be lost while school buildings are closed. As a parent, I'm doing my children a disservice to keep them enrolled in this type of learning environment. As public servants, you are doing the community a disservice to not offer an in-person learning options for those who are healthy, ready, and willing to return to school. We're a choice district. It's time that parents have choice. We need an option to return to in-person learning. Erica Huggins. I currently have a child at Lake Carolina Elementary Lower. While I appreciate everyone's hard work, communication, and effort to keep our kids safe, I feel as though as we, our parents, are doing a disservice by not having these kids in school. Should we be punished due to the lack of concern by USC students? Those numbers shouldn't be considered in our numbers. Many other districts are open, in person, and seem to be able to get it right. With a district as well known as Richland, we should be able to do it as well. Our kids are falling behind. They need to be in school. Parents need to get back to work. Please, we need to look at our specific area numbers, not the whole county. It's not fair that those USC students are able to go to class, but the kids who need it more have to suffer because of their lack of concern. Cindy Collins. Young children in daycare settings and minimum wage child care employees have been servicing children face-to-face for months now, so I still struggle to understand why my child cannot have their educational needs met in a face-to-face setting. That being said, the efforts made by educators in our district are recognized and appreciated, And although e-learning is being delivered more effectively and efficiently than in the spring, it is still not keeping my student engaged for an entire day. The instruction time in some classes is still the instruction time in some classes is still significantly less than it would be in a face-to-face classroom setting during a traditional day, impacting my child's intellectual and social development. With Richland County's numbers being strongly impacted by the university's number of cases, I do not feel confident that Richland 2's decision on being able to progress toward face-to-face instruction dependent upon Richland County numbers dropping is a fair analysis of the impact of COVID-19 on our district. And that is half of them, so I will pause there, Mr. Chair, and I will pick up the other half in the second public participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. All right, and now we'll move to item 7.1, and this is voting on executive session items. Student admission requested to the district's adult education program. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Agostini?
I move to approve the student admission request into the district's adult education program for students 1 and 2.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Holmes. Any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote.
The vote is 7-0.
Thank you. The motion carries. And now item 7.2, breach of contract. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Caution Parker?
I move that we direct the administration to make a formal complaint to the State Board of Education regarding 4 professional employees who breached their employment contracts with the district.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote.
The vote is 7-0.
Thank you. The motion carries. And now on to item 8.1, old business action requested. This would be for the approval of policy ADD, face covering. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Davis.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just asking for a point of personal privilege or
Yes,
personal. We would like to present before the board for consideration a amendment or your thoughts on a potential change to this policy. I have Dr. Marshall Franklin standing by to share with you this adjustment should the board deem it necessary.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Mr. Shad, members of the board, you will notice first that the changes that the board requested during first reading or at first reading are noted in yellow on the policy. So that those were insertions or deletions that were suggested by the board at the last meeting. District administration also requests 2 additional considerations from the board. The first consideration is in the definitions section, the second paragraph of that section, where the sentence reads, a face shield may be made of flexible plastic that wraps around the wearer's face and extends below his or her chin, may also be used as a face covering. District administration is asking that the board's permission to insert the phrase as an approved accommodation. This will add clarity to when a face shield can be worn as a face covering, as is recommended by the CDC and DPEC. The second consideration that district administration would like the board to consider is for us to be able to include an administrative rule to the policy. This will allow us to add some specificity about approved accommodations, as well as make any additional changes as recommended by DHEC, the CDC, or the State Department of Education.
Well, thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Mackey?
I move to approve policy ADD, face covering, with the recommended changes, revisions, and additions, and the administrative rule.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion?
Chair,
Ms. Agostini?
Quick question. Just wanting to confirm, last week when we had at our last meeting a discussion, and one of my colleagues brought up when we were talking about the difference between school volunteers and visitors, their understanding that visitors were coming in and out. I just want to be sure that our contract employees, that's what the contract service providers, we consider them to be visitors. For example, Sodexo, Service Solutions, is that who is covered in this as a
Yes,
visitor?
they would certainly be required to wear face covering.
Are they considered a visitor?
They are not.
They're not.
And they're employees.
They're not district employees.
They're not district employees. They are contracted services, but they have never been considered visitors as a part of the general operation of the school. And sometimes those individuals even have IDs at various schools, but they've never been considered visitors because they're there every day with a specific function for custodial services and for food vending purposes, but they've never been seen as visitors.
Well, I guess my question would be, then they're not included in this policy.
They will be required to follow this policy as stated, but whether or not they're included, I guess that's up to interpretation of the board. But they're not seen as visitors, so they're not covered under that. They would expect them to follow the employee section of this policy.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Manning?
Yeah, just to follow up on Ms. Agostini's comment and Dr. Davis, I believe that Dr. Davis, if I'm correct, that they would be requested to follow the spirit of the policy, but that's a contractual issue with the district, not so much a policy issue, correct? Right. That would fall under the contract with the vendor, making sure that they're following our protocols. So that's why it doesn't need to be in the policy, because that's actually managed through the contract with each of the vendors that we deal with.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other board members? All right. Seeing nothing else, please register your vote.
Mr. Chair, I haven't gotten a pop-up yet, but I'm voting in the affirmative.
Thank you.
The vote is 7-0.
Thank you. The motion carries. All right, moving on to old business action requested. I'm sorry, new business action requested. 9.1, certification of delegate for 2020, the SCSBA Delegate Assembly. In light of COVID, there's going to be a rather limited, they are going to have the conference here in Columbia, and while we would normally have 2 or 3 delegates to attend, this year SCSBA has limited it to just 1 delegate with an alternate, and my understanding is that Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker has volunteered to serve as the delegate at the legislative, at the delegate assembly in December, and that Dr. Teresa Holmes will serve as an alternate. And so I will entertain a motion to approve and certify them as our delegate and our
alternate.
The alternate for the delegate for our December meeting.
Mr. Chair? Oh, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Manning.
I make a motion that we accept and approve Dr. Caution Parker as our delegate and Dr. Teresa Holmes as our alternate.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Mrs. Mackey. Any discussion?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Shad, and if you said it and I missed it, I apologize. Richland 2 has 9 votes. He says 10, but we have 9 votes, and just wanted to confirm that even though we'll have 1 delegate and an alternate, we'll still have all of the votes that we ordinarily carry. They'll just be rendered by 1 person.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, please register your vote.
The vote is 7-0.
Thank you, motion carries. Moving on to item 10, new business, no action requested. 10.1 specifically, an update on human resources. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, and members of the board, and also to our viewing public, good evening. We have for you our annual update regarding human resources. As you know, we are just completed our first week of school, so we've had 6 total days of school as of today. Ms. Shawn Williams, our Chief of Human Resources, will provide the human resource update with you for you all this evening, and then we stand ready to answer any questions that the board may have following the presentation. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Dr. Davis and Mr. Chair and the board. It is with great pleasure that I present our Human Resources update. This past year, our team mission was one team, one mission. And I would like to say thank you to the Human Resources team for all of the work that they put in over the last few months to help with the smooth transition for the 2020-2021 school year. Next slide, Ms. Ruth. Thank you. So a number of classified and certified hires for the 2020-2021 school year. We had a total of 309. Of those, 258 were certified and 51 were classified. Our employees come from South Carolina, but in addition, we welcome a number of employees from across the United States. And you can see here, we have them all the way from Alabama to Washington State, and to include Hawaii. We also have our international teachers who come from Spain, the Philippines, Uganda, Cameroon, and Malaysia. We currently have 79 international teachers here in Richland School District 2. Next slide. So for our certified new hire demographics, you're able to see the diversity in our 2020-2021 new hires based on ethnicity, gender, and age group. The next slide, please. So we're going to look holistically at our certified demographics. You're able to see the district provided, or the numbers and percentages of our certified staff. One of the highlights of this slide is the male count, in which I will share more information in this presentation. You can also see our females, males, and our age group as far as in our certified demographics. Next slide. This right here is our total district demographics. We have a total of 3,757 employees. We service one of the largest employers here in Northeast Columbia. Our workforce is very diverse, and I would like to highlight that we have employees across multiple generations, everything from the silent generation, baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and we are welcoming some of our new Generation Z employees. So you can see here where we have provided here the numbers and the percentage of our staff. Next slide. So the highlight of tonight is the kickoff of Premier 100. We were excited to follow Dr. Davis's leadership, and one of his visions was to make sure that we hired teachers of color. As you all know, that there is a 2% minority males across the nation. We're so excited here in Richland School District 2 to have 6% minority males. If you see here that we have Asian males, Black males, Hispanic males, for a total of 22. Again, our goal over the next 4 years is to secure 100 males of colors. If you notice, if you'll go back to the slide, Libby, thank you. If you notice, one of the highlights on this slide is that we have 5 teachers, 1 in early childhood and 4 in elementary. So that is a definite highlight, and being intentional about making sure that we have males in our elementary schools. Okay. Some of the contingent highlights here is our Columbia College partnership with the APEC program and our Future Educator Signing Day. We are pleased to announce that 12 of our employees who were teacher assistants became teachers this school year. They range from anywhere from early childhood to special education and elementary. So we're excited to welcome them to our teaching force. We currently have 13 employees who are participating in the 2020-21 cohort, and we're actively recruiting for the 2021-2022 cohort. So we hope to increase those numbers. So for our Future Educating Signing Day, one of the things that we are pleased to announce is that this is year 2 where we have focused on our high school students who are becoming educators. We are trying to promote from within and start early. So our high school graduating seniors, we do have a sign-in day where they sign, and we hope that they return back to Richland too in 4 or 5 years and be in our education ranks. Next slide. So here's some of the highlights. Some of the people who joined our team for the Premier 100. Here are some of our male teachers of color shaping the future. And you can see that they are at Westwood, Spring Valley, Ridgeview. We have some at Summit Parkway. So just across the district, we were able to place some of our Premier 100 males of color. Next slide. So here's the highlight of tonight, is that we're at currently our fill rate is at 99.98%. If you look at the historical data from at 2018 to 2019, at the beginning of the school, we had 26 vacancies. For the 2019-2020 school year, we had 21. This year, we opened up with only 4 teaching vacancies. And you can see currently we have 1 at the elementary level, 1 at the middle school, and 2 at the high school level. And so we're super excited for this fill rate for this school year. So what are we going to do to recruit? One of the things that you should know about us in HR is that we're always recruiting. We never stop with our virtual recruitment fairs, and we would like to thank our principals and supervisors for making sure that they were interviewing and selecting qualified candidates to teach our students. So we have some highlights here. On November, we have our November virtual recruitment fair on November the 11th. We will also continue to do our annual holiday career fair, December the 15th and 16th. We will have our large career fair on January the 9th. We will continue, hopefully, with our Get on the Bus tour. It may be a virtual tour, but is scheduled for February 3rd, 2021. We also have our March career fair, which is March the 11th, 2021, and then our Premier 100 conference. And we hope to be able to do that live this year on March 27th, 2021. And this concludes my presentation, and I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Davis and Ms. Williams. Ms. Mackey?
I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and for all the people who worked to provide this data. I'm glad to hear that our fill rate is as good as it can be right now, and I'm thankful to see the efforts at diversity. People who look different, who have different worldview, different perspectives, different cultures. The more people we have in diverse, the more people we have who are diverse, the more we can address cultural and diversity blind spots that we may not even be aware of. So I'm particularly appreciate that. Thank you for your presentation. It's quite comprehensive. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other board members? I'll go with Dr. Elkins and then Ms. Agostini.
Ms. Williams, thank you so much for that report. It was very detailed, and thank you for your recruitment efforts. Your team, I like to see that we have made great progress, only 4 vacancies, so thank you for that. If you can just tell me, what is Get on the Bus tour? That's my first question.
Okay, our Get on the Bus tour was started a few years ago by our previous recruiter, Debbie Jordan, where we go to the colleges or universities and pick up the students. And we bring them back to the district and we welcome them to the district for a day experience. They spend time in our classrooms. We feed them lunch. They meet with our superintendent. They meet with our staff. And the schools that we've added on, we actually started with Winthrop. And we have Winthrop, Newberry, Benedict, Allen joined our team, and South Carolina State. So we have grown the program, or the Get on the Bus tour, and hope to grow it even more.
Okay. My next question is for the young men that we displayed. Do we place them with mentors to make sure that they understand the Richland 2 Premier way of teaching, and also that we retain them for the following year?
Yes, ma'am. We actually have two dedicated staff members who work closely with them, Dr. Sean Super and Mr. Arthur Newton. They actually work closely with them and meet with them on a monthly basis, and they're their direct contact if they have any questions. We did start that last school year as well, and they will continue to meet and welcome those individuals. It is just them, so they get an opportunity to speak. And if they need someone to come in, then they invite us to come in, but they lead that, so that way they feel free to have a conversation so we can provide them whatever they need to be successful.
And just my final question, out of that group that we recruited, the young men, how many are first year teachers and how many are veteran teachers?
I don't have that information right offhand, but that is something that I will provide in the next board brief.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank
You're
you,
welcome.
your team, for a job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Agostini.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Williams, for the presentation, and congratulations on a great fill rate. What was our retention rate for last year? How many teachers did we lose?
Last year we lost over 300. I don't have the exact number, but it was over 300. But again, that will be information that I can provide to you in a board brief. I'll be more than happy to provide that information.
Okay, because I'd be interested to know what our percentage turnover was for teachers and compare that to state statistics and national statistics to see how we're doing that way. If you could provide that information, that would be great. And also, then I've asked a couple of times, and I was told a percentage, but I'm wondering, do you know the number of where we started last school year with the minority men teachers? We've always said 6%, but there's a definite, do we have the number of actual employees?
The number of actual employees we should be able to go back to the slide in the presentation. We have that information for this current school year. We would have to get the information for last school year.
Okay, and I would love that. And the reason why I'm asking, and I support the Premier 100, I'm just trying to figure out, how the number was determined and why it was 4 years. Do we have those answers?
Yeah, I can answer that question. The number was simply determined that we wanted 100. I wanted to try to recruit 100 men of color within a time period. So I set, using a SMART goal, I set a time bound for accomplishing that. And so we set out for the number 100. It could have been 150. It could have been 1,000. But I wanted something that was difficult, was challenging, but not unachievable. And so we set it at 100 over the next 4 years, based on the fact that there was only 2% of the nation's teachers were teachers of men of color. We felt like 100 was a good. I felt like 100 was a good goal for us to reach for, giving us clearly a target of 25 a year over the next 4 years.
Well, I guess my question was, did we look at, previous years and the number of teachers that were recruited, to forecast the number?
We had no recruitment effort for men of color in our district previously to this. There was no official programs. There was no official programs specifically to recruit male teachers of color. We talked about it, that it was important to have, but we never had anything official or an official effort to do so.
So I guess the point would be then that there was no tracking information. We never kept that data.
We did not. I mean, we can go back and look at how many teachers, men of color, that were hired over the last 10 years. I don't know if anybody ever kept up with that data. I don't know if, to be honestly, we haven't really even broken down the data in this way in our hiring practices so that we can see how well we're doing in those areas and trying to close those gaps that may exist and trying to bring in more men of color. Some principals had a more focus on that. I, as a principal, for example, at Spring Valley, specifically had a focus on trying to recruit more men of color at the school at the time. And so that school had a specific number, or maybe a higher number than most other high schools in the district at the time. So when coming to the district office, I brought that mindset and that priority or initiative with me, and thought it was important that as research was demonstrating that young students of color tend to do better academically when they can have an experience of having at least one teacher of color in their classroom experience. I realized that we had students over the course of their time in Richland too that never had a male teacher of color, elementary school, middle school, or high school, specifically in a content area, maybe as a coach, maybe as a PE teacher, but not as a math teacher. There's so many other places that we can we could really be looking at. If you look at a number of APIs in our district, for example, we probably have no men of color who serve as curriculum leads in the school district. If you look at magnet directors, there are 40 magnet programs in our school district. Very few of those programs, if any of them, are led by any male of color, and maybe a few of them are led by females of color. And it may speak to the notion of why the number of students participating in those programs don't feel or seem to be able to aspire to be in some of those programs at a larger rate. Our school district is roughly 60% African American student body population, and so we were trying to put efforts in place that would reflect that by having teachers and teachers in places that those students can relate to. If we look at the percentage of AP teachers in our district of color, that percent again is not necessarily reflective of the population of the students that we teach in our school district. And so this is what this effort is for, to try to close that gap.
And I'm not opposed to the effort. I'm just trying to get to determine, how we're setting goals, what information we're using, or if the random numbers coming out. My final question would be, do we know how many men of color or minority people left last year? How many did we get?
We do not know that information off the top of our head. I think it would be to be very careful for us to just simply look at that, but we can provide that in a board brief to the board of the number of teachers that may have left. I don't know. Do you have an idea what the national retention rate is for a school district? Because I've never seen that data or know if that data exists or not, if someone's keeping that data, or what the retention rate is for a school district, considering that most school districts are in teacher shortages. There's a teacher shortage across the nation. So if the board or you specifically know of what that rate is that we should be shooting for, the board gets an opportunity to set goals each and every year. And that has never been a goal that has been shared with me about retention rate of minority students, or a specific retention rate of teachers in our school district. I think we would have to disaggregate the number of teachers who are retiring as well versus the number of teachers who voluntarily leave and matriculate to other school districts or to other professions in order to get a clear picture of our retention process. I would like to state, though, that the number wasn't just some made up number. Most goals that we set are just a number that you can come up with that should be attainable, but be difficult to reach at the same time. So that's, again, where the 100 came from. But if the board has a goal that they would like to see the superintendent set as far as the number of minorities students, minority teachers, I'll be happy to entertain or listen to what the board goal may be. I've presented this data information over the past 2 years and not have received any feedback on whether or not 100 was too many or 100 is not enough. And so if you have a suggestion, I'm staying ready to listen to that this time.
No, I'm just trying to understand how we came up with the number 100, and then the reason why I asked the question about how many have been retained in that capacity is, have we determined that if we hire 100 but lose 150, was the program successful? Have we met the goal that we were hoping to achieve?
Well, that goal will be determined at the end of 4 years. Because at the end of 4 years, the idea is to have 100 more men of color than we had 4 years previously. So this is just the first year of the project.
But
so within 4 years, when we look back, we can look and see where we started at. And in 4 years, if we have 100 more men of color in our ranks, then I would say that was achievable. But I do want to stress this is an ambitious goal because there aren't that many men of color in the education field to begin with. So it's a very ambitious goal for the district to set. And one I think that has gotten a lot of national acclaim and recognition because this is something that's very important. So whether we fall short of that goal, I will accept that because if we only get 50 more, there's 50 more than we had, and that 50 would have an indelible impact on the lives of young children in our school district as our minority population continues to grow in Richland too.
Well, and thank you, Dr. Davis. Let me be clear. I am not opposed to the idea. I think it's a wonderful idea to seek out these employees. But what I'm trying to determine is actually whether, it was successful or not. Because if we hire 100 and we lose 150, then somehow we're not capturing the group that we hope to capture.
And I just want to be clear that this is a superintendent's initiative. This was not a goal that was given to me by the board. And I need to be clear in that because I don't want the expectation to be that every time the superintendent has an initiative that there's some kind of way that becomes an evaluation or evaluative tool to see whether or not there are multiple initiatives and multiple goals that are not public that the school district works to achieve. This was an initiative that was introduced by the superintendent, but this was not a board goal that was given to me by the 7-member boards. So this is just an initiative of something we put in place. This was an internal goal that was set by me for my staff to work on this. So whether or not, again, if it's successful at the end, it was a part of an initiative for us to try to do something about increasing the number of African-American teachers or men of color in our ranks in our school district, which we are already doing a pretty good job of doing because we have 6%, which is 3 times the national average. But that's something that as we strive to be premier, we can continue to raise that number.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. All right, Ms. Mackey, and then Mr. Manning, and then Dr. Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just speak to goals. I appreciate Dr. Davis taking the initiative to try to put something in place that wasn't before. You can't track something that wasn't in place before. There was a time in this country when women couldn't vote. Somebody thought it was important that women be able to vote. There was a time in this country that people of color weren't able to vote. Somebody thought it was important, and so they put initiatives in place and tried to get laws passed for people to be able to vote. Sometimes when there is a disparity, someone has to step up to the plate and say, we should do something different, whether it's measurable or not. Someone has to take the initiative and say that something has to be done different. These things don't happen by happenstance. You don't have more, small and women and minority vendors in Richland 2 by happenstance. Somebody thought it was important. I remember Mr. Jackson used to harp on that. He was very concerned about the numbers of small women and minority vendors in Richland 2 because that wasn't always something that was a focal point. It wasn't always something that was emphasized. Nobody was really watching that. And as a result, those numbers didn't grow. But when someone put a spotlight on the importance, those numbers began to grow. Someone has to put a spotlight on areas where there are disparities. And I appreciate our district making an effort to make sure that we put a spotlight on areas where there are disparities, whether they are successful or not, whether you have 100 Black men or not. And I want us to be mindful of the groups that we monitor. Are we monitoring the number of white women who are not being retained? Are we monitoring the number of Asian Americans? Are we monitoring all of the groups that we have in place in the district? Are we watching everyone who is retained and who is not? If we have a spotlight on making sure that we have equity and diversity in all aspects of Richland 2, then it has to start somewhere. And if it's an initiative that wasn't in place before, then it's not trackable. Women in leadership. Women's salaries are not commensurate with the work they do and are not really comparable to the male counterparts. Somebody thought it was important that we start watching that. They're not able to track that forever because it wasn't always in place. It's important that women, the disparities, like women's salaries or equity in the workplace, it has to start somewhere with someone having a spotlight on the disparities. So I'm thankful that someone has a spotlight on the disparity in that area. We have lots of disparities in this country, in our world, in our cultures, and not everything is going to be necessarily measurable, especially when you're starting at ground zero. So I just want to thank you for starting where you are, Dr. Davis. You've already stated the fact that this is not a part of your evaluation. This is only your initiative. So there's no success fail rate with that. It's something that you are impassioned to do, and I wholeheartedly support that, as well as a small and minority vendors that we have in our district, our teachers who form the Rainbow Coalition, literally and figuratively, of their mindsets, of the culture they bring to the table, Caucasian, Black, Asian, Latino. I just appreciate all that they bring to the table, and the fact that Richland 2 is spotlighting, trying to embrace diversity in every way, shape, or form. I applaud you, our administration, and I thank our teachers who come from every walk of socioeconomic levels and cultures and backgrounds. I thank you for all that you bring to the table, and for these people who are different in so many ways, to be able to reach a student who can identify with someone who looks or thinks or is different like them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment, Dr. Davis, this is not the first time that you presented your plan for the Premier 100, the details around that initiative that you've had in place. We've talked about this at multiple board meetings in the past. You've been very transparent about the program, what the goals are. That's been presented to us in numerous ways, not just board meetings. So I appreciate the effort, the transparency that you've had in place with that. And I mean, everything that you've told us tonight is just reiterating what you've already shared with us in the past regarding this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes.
Yes, I wanted to speak on the achievement aspect of this. When I got on the board and the board has continued to push cultural competency, one of the main goals that we did set as a board was that students needed to see teachers that were reflective of themselves. And Dr. Davis' initiative does match a district goal. So I appreciate that, because a student cannot be what they cannot see. First of all, with males in general, whether they're minority or not, but especially for minority males. The vast majority of teachers are generally Caucasian middle class women, and we appreciate everyone that serves. But it is important for minority males in the achievement aspect to see someone that looks like them, other than just in the sports areas. As Dr. Davis mentioned earlier, it is important for them to see them teaching math and science and things of that nature. So, and it's also important just on the male, whether you're a minority male or not. So it's a double benefit to have males and minority males. Secondly, I'd like to say that the number of openings, I congratulate Sean's team for only 4 openings in this particular time. That's phenomenal, because there is a teacher shortage worldwide, basically. And for us to only have 4 openings in Richland School District 2, I think that speaks for our district and the effort our district has put into things. But I do, again, want to keep stressing at that point that cultural competency is something that the district, we set as one of our goals. And to have Dr. Davis and his team move forward with his own personal initiative to match a district goal and to get this achievement thus far is wonderful. And I appreciate the efforts on everybody's part. And that's not to say we don't appreciate all teachers, because to me, I'm an educator. So I appreciate everybody who goes into education, takes it seriously, and does a good job. But you do have to work on the achievement aspect of minority males, and that's what we said we were going to do, and that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini?
One more time, I want to follow up and say I'm not against the initiative. I support it. I'm excited to see it. I'm just wanting to make sure that when we're trying to account for the success of the program, that it's covered in both ends. Again, if we hire 100 and if we lose 150, was it successful? And that's it. But I'm glad to see this initiative. I like the creativity. I just want to make sure that somehow, we're assessing it properly.
And I would just say, for the sake of, then, let's not count it as a success at all. Let's just not say it's whether success or failure. It's just an initiative of the school district to try to recruit and retain men of color so they have an impact on student achievement. I don't want it to be something that, personally, with all due respect, Ms. Agostini, I don't want it to be something that becomes a matter of whether or not it becomes, we measure it as a success. It's going to be a success to me if it's just one teacher of color. And if that one teacher of color impacts the lives of a young man or a young woman, whether they're of color or not, because all students benefit from having teachers of color. It helps us break down biases and stereotypes about who is intellectual, about who is capable of doing what. And so I just rather for students to have and appreciate the fact that they have a diverse teaching population and teaching force that they can relate to, so that when they matriculate through Richland School District 2 and move on to college or into a career, that it won't be the first time they've had an opportunity to work with a teacher or a professor or an instructor or whomever that may not look like them or may look like them. It's just an initiative for us to continue to move to practice our principal practices of being diverse and inclusive, and also give our students an opportunity to be global citizens, so that they're impacted by other people that are not necessarily from their community or from their upbringing. So I don't want it to be a goal for the board if that's okay. I know that's a larger discussion. We've had this discussion multiple times, and I feel like it's very redundant because we've been here before. This is just an initiative of the superintendent that I think will benefit students as an educator and as a person who has spent his entire career in this field, as a person who has experienced what those biases feel like when you walk into a room and people don't assume that you are intellectual, that they assume that you are the coach or the janitor or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they don't assume that. As being a young man who experienced both having to teach teachers of color and what that had an impact on my life, and those who have not, I would say it's beneficial for us to just ensure that we are at least striving to provide that. Whether we put it in this whole issue of putting it into some sort of box so that it can be measured to determine if it's successful or not, one teacher of color impacting the life of a student is successful. There are so many other areas that if we did that, then we need to also look at those other areas. And as if we're talking about breaking down inequities, social justice, and anti-racism as a part of our equity practice, that we really, really need to look at. And that could be for another long conversation. But we do have some areas that if we're going to do that with men of color, then we need to look at a whole lot of other areas to then, as a board and a superintendent, to determine what's going to be our preference. As I stated earlier, we have 40 magnet programs. You are very familiar with many of them. If I looked at the number of male teachers of color in those magnet programs that teach in some of those magnet programs, it is shocking what that percent is. If we extract those individuals, if we look at the number of lead teachers of color in magnet programs, it is shocking what that is. If we look at the number of AP teachers who teach at the 5 high schools around our district, it is shocking what that number of teachers of color is. We're representing the total population of teachers of color in our school district. So if we want to start setting goals and be serious about measuring them, then it shouldn't just be with men of color for the Premier 100. That was an initiative that was created as a result of trying to recruit more men of color to the classrooms, because we have some other long-standing barriers and inequities that exist in our district that we need to be courageous about tackling. And I look forward to your support and the board's support on addressing those historical racial barriers that exist in some of the practices that we have in the school district.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Then Ms. Agostini.
Actually, I think Dr. Davis just addressed what I was going to say. I wanted to clarify that the 100 Black Men is not a program. It's not a program. It's just something that we do. We have teachers in the district. One of the things that we do as a district, we make sure the teachers have the resources that they need, that they're not working in a hostile environment, that they're not harassed. There are certain things that we do. They're not programs. They're just things that we do. Making sure that students have, what they need for their education. I mean, there's just things that are a given. So I wanted to just clarify that it's not a program, but it's just something that you are doing. And I appreciate it, Dr. Davis. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey. I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Agostini.
That's all right. No, and I liked Dr. Davis's last line that we have to take a look at a lot of other things and see if we're being accountable, because that's actually my point of this whole conversation, is us being accountable. And whether it's a program or initiative, when we're using taxpayer dollars to do any of this, at some point we do have to be accountable. And that's the point I was trying to make. So we do have to measure and determine the success of a program or initiative, regardless of who implements it. If we're using our tax funder or our taxpayers' dollars on these educational programs, whatever it may be, at some point, as the board, as the superintendent, all 8 of us here are accountable for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey.
Is there a detriment though to our spending taxpayers' dollars to try to hire more people of color? Just a question. That's all.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Again, thank you, Dr. Davis and Ms. Williams, for this update.
Thank you.
And now we will move to item 10.2, a report on back to school, specifically addressing academics. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, to my board and to our viewing public, I thank you all for listening to that. I never thought that that would have been as long and arduous as it was to celebrate the number of men of color that we are trying to recruit to our school district. But moving forward, to discuss our back to school, we have Dr. Marshall Franklin, who will, I think, turn it over to Nancy Gregory, our chief for academics, to discuss our academic portion of our back to school update. Dr. Franklin.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, Mr. Shad, members of the board. You will recall at our last board meeting, our back to school report focused on operations and health and safety. Tonight's back to school report will focus on academics and will be delivered by Mrs. Nancy Gregory, our Chief Academic Officer, and Mrs. Cte Davis, our Chief Special Education Officer. And I also believe they have some additional folks who are going to chime in as they deliver the report. So I'll yield to Ms. Gregory.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Shad, school board members, and Dr. Davis.
Ms. Gregory?
Yes?
I do not see your video turned on.
All right, I'm working on it right now.
Okay.
It's not wanting to come on. It says because the host has stopped it. All right.
There we go.
All right, very good. All right, I'll start over again then. Good evening, Chairman Shad, school board members, and Dr. Davis. The purpose of the academics committee, or the academics committee of the Back to School Task Force, is to implement the 3 phases of instruction in the district's reopening schools plan with fidelity. To begin tonight's report, we are sharing a video to remind you where we left off with the Reopening Schools Task Force on July 21st.
I'm Brian Hayward, a member of the Technology Integration Specialist team here at Richland 2. We all know that this spring, because of COVID-19, teaching and learning was a shock to us, having to move from the classroom to a virtual environment. So our team, along with other teams here at Richland 2, got together and prepared for this to be the summer of professional learning and development. We trained over 2,000 teachers and we focused on specialized groups here in the district to make sure that our fine arts teachers, to make sure our long-term substitutes, to make sure that administration and instructional aides were ready to engage in the learning process this fall. It didn't matter whether it was face-to-face, it didn't matter if it was a hybrid model or a virtual model. We wanted to make sure our teachers and our students and their families had the tools needed to engage in learning. Using AVID strategies and other instructional strategies, we have prepared teachers to take on the challenge of education, to present rigorous and high-achieving content, and also to gather data from students in many different ways.
Libby, I'm going to move on to the next slide. I don't think our sound was working. I'm so sorry. That was Brian Hayward from our technology staff, and he was sharing just an overview of the system-wide approach that we had shared at the last board meeting.
Ms. Gregory,
yes.
I'm not sure why it's not working on y'all. I've got myself unmuted so you can hear my sound. I'll try something different on the other one. It is working on the live stream, okay. They can hear it on the live stream. So I apologize that the board couldn't hear it, but they can hear it in the live stream.
All right, so that's just it was just a recap of what we shared with you again about a systems approach, framework, professional learning, those kinds of things. For tonight's report, we will share these bulleted topics. When you get to the focus areas, the three areas have been selected to highlight. They will be TLCs and technology support, CTE courses, and access to quality library books through our media center. The report will end with phase 2 highlights. In our next slide, Libby, we wanted to share some of the ongoing preparation for phase 1 since we met with you last time, such as you will see focus groups, parent and teacher focus groups, Facebook Live, and much more. In the last bullet, you will see LEAP days listed. In this slide, you will see that Dr. Franklin shared with you earlier at an earlier board meeting a little bit about LEAP days and what they were. For an update, LEAP days took place on August 17th through 21st with 4,194 participants. This represented 23.3% of our pre-K through 8 students who took part in activities, instruction, or assessments to prepare them for the beginning of the school year. This slide is just a reminder of the reopening phases and the learning model options. Again, this part of our report will focus on phase 1. Now, the next 2 slides may look familiar. The next 2 slides were about phase 1 highlights that Dr. Franklin shared at the August 11th school board meeting. And so just to refresh your memories, we talked about students having a defined daily schedule, teaching options, delivering instruction, and the last bullet on Chromebooks and hotspots. We'll talk a little bit more about that last bullet later in the presentation. In this slide, you'll remember that we shared with you about attendance in phase 1, grading practices, interventions and SPED, and resources. With that last bullet, we'll talk more about that with Abby Cobb discussing inverted services later in the report. And then finally for this slide, Dr. Emily Manigo, our Director of Virtual Programs, will provide an update about the R2 eSchool program.
Good evening. We're excited that we launched our Richland 2 eSchool program this year with an current enrollment of 682 students in grades K through 12. We're staffed with highly qualified full-time and adjunct instructors to support our students. The goal of our program ultimately, beyond COVID-19, is to provide flexibility to support the needs of families in our district, our students, and our schools. So we're very excited and look forward to sharing more information as the year goes on. At this time, Mr. Chuck Holland will speak to you about technology support in Richland 2.
Thank you, Dr. Manigo. As you're aware, we have technology and learning coaches supporting each of our schools. The TLC is playing an integral part in the e-learning model. Each school's technology and learning coach, their roles include supporting and coaching teachers. They join Google Classrooms to observe teachers teaching to provide feedback on the instructional model. They will offer school-specific PD to fill in technology gaps while also supporting parents in the e-learning phase. Before school even started, TLCs made sure that teachers' devices were functioning by conducting tech checks. They made sure all students who needed a device or indicated their need for a hotspot in the district survey had one before school started. They encouraged and worked with teachers to connect with their students and parents using Blackboard's teacher messaging to have students complete device checks before the start of school. Since the start of school, TLCs have supported parents by sharing the parent resource website and troubleshooting as necessary, especially for the younger students. We continue to distribute hotspots through Longleaf to students in need and as they request them. And now, Mary Page Boyce, Director for College and Career Initiatives, will speak about the CTE programs.
Thank you, Chuck. Good evening, everyone. Like all of our teachers in Richland 2, the CTE teachers have been hard at work over the summer. Preparing for this year, the CTE teachers were given the opportunity to ask for anything they needed to make virtual education possible in their fields this fall. As you all are keenly aware, the time spent in CTE classrooms for many of our students is the time of day that is different, that challenges them in a different way. And just to be quite frank, for many of them, it is a dropout prevention program. So we are tasked with continuing to make the time spent with us in CTE, even though it is virtual, hands-on and relevant to the field of interest. Because the needs in each program and the classes are different, what we provided was based on teacher requests, and some teachers have been provided, for example, software that can be used with students at home on Chromebooks, while other teachers' students are receiving take-home laptops so they can continue to work at the appropriate level at home. We have ordered a document camera for every CTE teacher so they can perform live demonstrations under the camera to be broadcast at home. For example, proper cutting techniques can be demonstrated by a culinary arts teacher with a bird's eye view. And then borrowing an idea from our friends at Midlands Tech, you can see the picture there. We ordered a pair of eye view glasses for every teacher that requested a pair. These glasses have a camera between the two lenses that allow teachers to create an eye-level video of classroom demonstrations that they can share with students. And Chuck Holland helped us by training each CTE teacher on how to use these glasses on District Professional Development Day. And as we finish up this slide in just a second, there will be a short example of one of those videos. But we also have teachers preparing kits for take-home use. We had our first pickup tonight right at R2I2 in the bus loop, and students are getting, these are some of the props from a culinary arts kit, and they're just an example for a kit. The baking and pastry students who are going to work at home to make a pie, their kit would include all of the tools they need in case they don't have them at home, and in addition, they would have the ingredients that they need. Other boxes might have a solar oven kit. So those are nice for students in certain classes whose teachers elected to do that. Finally, we have worked on procedures for CTE teachers who are willing and able to bring students who are also willing and able to come in for face-to-face instruction in situations where that is necessary or desirable for skills development. And now the video where you will see one of our teachers, Mr. Nick Jones, who is demonstrating the basic premise of the 3D printers in his classroom for his new students. And if we're going to show the video.
And I changed the settings, so let's hope that everyone on the Zoom call can hear what I hear and the live stream people hear.
So here
Right.
you can see a 3D printer that's in action. The extruder here is moving this PLA plastic filament, and the filament is coming down this tube to be melted and deposited onto the correct layer of the part. If everything goes successfully, we end up with a finished product. Here's our tugboat, and this is actually our benchmark model. So this tells us a lot of different variables about the 3D printer while we print it. So this is just a brief introduction to the desktop 3D printing method. You guys are going to be using this a lot in the class, and we'll get even deeper in depth as we go through this semester. But just an introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much for y'all's attention, and I will now pass the baton to Ms. Penny Atkinson, Executive Director of Secondary Instruction.
Thank you, Ms. Boyce. Good evening, everyone. As you know, it is always very important for our students to have materials that they choose to read, even in phase one when our traditional school libraries are not actually open. Our students from kindergarten through seniors have access to 77,000 ebooks. You can see in this graphic that our two lead media specialists put together the different companies that we have worked with to secure these titles, and of course also includes our school libraries and our Richland County libraries. But every student in our district has access to culturally relevant titles within this 77,000 number, and our students are already in the process of checking library books out and enjoying time for pleasure reading. And the next person that you will hear from is our Chief Special Education Officer, Ms. Cte Davis.
Good evening. In Richland 2, we have almost 5,000 students with disabilities, of which approximately 3,800 are served with an IEP or an individualized education plan, and another 1,100 with a 504 or an individualized accommodations plan. So we are very busy working with our schools to provide unique learning experiences for these learners during all phases of our back-to-school plan. During phase one, the focus of the district special education team is to work closely with our teachers to provide consistent daily instruction using the Richland 2 instructional model. In addition, our special education teachers are collaborating with our general ed teachers to ensure our students have access to the general education curriculum via accommodations or modifications. If necessary, teachers are sending or delivering customized resources to students who need materials at home to address their individualized learning needs. As you'll see on the next slide, the partnership between school and home is very important during all phases of our back-to-school plan, but is paramount during phase one as we address the unique learning needs of our students with disabilities. Our staff is available to hold IEP and 504 meetings virtually and have begun the process of scheduling the required annual reviews of our students' plans. Parents should contact their child's case manager or 504 administrator to discuss plans or to schedule a meeting. As you'll see in our next slide, we're excited about some of the creative and safe options that we're starting to provide to some students, such as our work-based learning in-house experience for our students in our warehouse who are supporting our back-to-school program as pictured here on the slide. And this is exciting. In the next few weeks, we will begin providing in-person therapies such as OT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech to certain students or to a select group of students. And we'll also have our students working at Providence Northeast Hospital to continue what we started with Project Search. As many of you have come out to the graduation for those students, they actually spend 100% of their time in the hospital setting. And of course, we cannot replicate that here, so we're actually having them work at the hospital. As you'll see in the next slide, in the next coming weeks, but by the beginning of October, we will meet with every student, parent of a student with an IEP. And they'll be contacted to develop a service delivery plan. And this plan will outline services if school is disrupted for any reason. For example, what we're calling a contingency. And the contingency is specifically in cases where we're not able to deliver instruction virtually or hybrid. How would we provide instruction for those students? And so we'll come up with unique ways that parents will be able to facilitate learning in the absence of our being able to deliver instruction in cases of, per se, a natural disaster and all power and other resources are out. In our next slide and our next final slide, during phase 2, our middle and high school students that are in specialized programs or what have traditionally been called self-contained. These students actually spend almost their entire day in a special education class. Those students will not participate in the AABB model that Dr. Shealy will present later in the presentation. Those students will actually attend school 4 days per week. So we will make sure those students get additional instruction, just like the students that are served in our elementary schools, and they will be served in a community model. In addition, for all students, we will work to maintain the community model aspect of our safety plan for our special ed and general ed students by having our teachers push into classrooms and also having some of our students engage with their general education classes virtually. Next, we will have Dr. Sean Suber. He's Director of MTSS, State and Federal Programs.
Good evening. In the spring of last year, our ESOL teachers and staff pitched in to support our teachers with virtual learning. ESOL teachers are providing virtual instruction on the 4 domains of English language learning development, which includes reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Our teachers are also screening newcomers across the district, K through 12, but we're also screening students in private schools according to Title III guidelines. Our ESOL teachers and staff are communicating with our families to ensure that students have hotspots as well as virtual directions. We continue to translate important information in how-to videos for ESOL families. We are extremely proud of our teachers and staff for having the highest exiting rates the last 2 years in our district history. MTSS, with our interventionists did the same thing as our ESOL teachers by aiding and supporting our teachers in Tier 1 virtually last spring. We will continue to screen with EasyCBM all K1 students according to the South Carolina state mandate. Our goal is to close learning gaps for all students through the virtual platform of Edgenuity, Pathblazer, and MyPath. We will continue to progress monitor and benchmark our students in the virtual environment as we would do in a face-to-face setting. And now, Dr. John Arnold, Director of Accountability, Research, Evaluation, will speak on assessments.
Good evening. As you know, all federal and state mandated accountability assessments were canceled last spring. This summer, Act 142 was passed, and it included several provisions related to assessments for the current school year. And there are just a few that I would like to mention. First, districts must pre-assess all students in kindergarten through 9th grade within the first 10 days of the school year, and assess them again by the end of the calendar year. Richland 2 kindergarten students are being assessed using the EasyCBM, and students in 1st grade through 9th grade are being assessed with NWEA's math, reading, and math growth tests. Second, the South Carolina Department of Education has requested a waiver from the U.S. Department of Education for the federally mandated accountability assessments for this school year. Those assessments include SC Ready, SC Pass, End of Course, and Access for ELS. Next slide. However, until that waiver is approved by the United States Department of Education, Richland School District 2 will proceed with preparing our students and making sure that they are ready for those assessments. Now, although South Carolina has requested a waiver from a number of assessments, those are the ones that are accountability related. There are still assessments that are listed here that are needed to meet individual student needs and will still be administered this year. And now, our district's lead social worker, Ms. Abby Cobb, will speak to you about inverted services.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. Good evening to everyone. I would like to start off discussing our Richland 2 student contact procedures that are currently being implemented during Phase 1 and will continue to be implemented throughout the school year. During the spring, our Richland 2 teachers, administrators, learning support services staff, and other school staff did an amazing job of contacting students and families and following up when concerns occurred. From that experience, we learned it will be helpful to have a structured procedure in place to ensure that all expectations regarding student and family contact is known. As discussed by Dr. Suber regarding our MTSS work, we know providing tiers of interventions are essential to providing effective and meaningful services. Therefore, our contact procedures are consistent with our school's multi-tiered systems of support. Starting in Tier 1, schools will ensure that there is consistent communication regarding attendance expectations for students, parents, and school staff. Also in Tier 1, teachers will be reaching out to their students if there are concerns with their attendance and/or participation in lessons and assignment completion. If teacher contact is not successful, the school engagement outreach team will then take the lead. Each school is tasked with creating their own school engagement outreach team, which will provide an additional layer of support by implementing additional methods of contact with the student and family. If those efforts are not successful, individualized interventions will be put into place in Tier 3 by utilizing a multidisciplinary problem-solving process, and if necessary, we will continue to move up the tiers to our truancy procedures. Next slide, I would like to discuss with you our engagement outreach procedures. We all know how important it is for our students to be in school, in the buildings with our staff. However, until we can do that safely, we are going to go where our students are living. Using multiple types of Richland 2 data, we have identified communities where students would likely benefit from school staff coming into their neighborhood. Schools' engagement outreach teams will get on a bus and conduct a community site visit. During the visits, our staff will provide resources, information, check-ins, and provide support. We began our community site visits last week with 4 sites. We'll be conducting another 4 community site visits tomorrow, and during week 3 of school, we will be in 15 communities, and we hope to add more in the coming weeks. The second part of our engagement outreach includes conducting student well-check visits. Schools will identify students through their tiered student contact procedures, and the school engagement outreach team will once again get on a bus and conduct a student well-check visit with a focus on the student's wellness and assist with any barriers that may be affecting attendance and participation. We believe these outreach procedures are strong and effective methods of service delivery. Our community site visits will provide generalized and global outreach, and our student well-check visits will provide a more individualized follow-up. Our school staff are excited. They can't wait to get out into the community to see their students, and they are ready to get on the bus.
Thank you, Abby. We will wrap up this part of our presentation with video reflections from August 31st, the first day of Phase 1, before turning it over to Dr. Shealy for highlights of Phase 2.
I gotta tell you, there were a couple times during the day, and obviously still now, that I went, oh, what am I doing? This isn't gonna go right. But the kids are fabulous, and the parents were fabulous, and we all worked through it. It's been a really long day.
All right, so we're gonna start in Spanish. Bienvenidos, hola, bienvenidos a la clase de Español 2. Me llamo Señorita Zeta.
Would you like to tell us how you felt about the first day of school today?
Yeah, I'm going to school.
Are you happy about school?
Yeah.
I know. Dominic, when I first got on the computer, I was a little nervous, but guess what? you were the first one to help Miss Woodard stay calm because you were on the computer and you were ready to go and excited about school. Dominic, thank you for helping Miss Woodard stay calm first thing this morning.
Today was an awesome day in school. We had so much fun. It was a lot better than I expected compared to last year with all the e-learning. I had a lot of fun with the teachers, seeing some that I already had last year, and also seeing students that I saw last year, haven't seen in a while. Today was an awesome day.
My first day of school went really, really well. The teachers were really organized and prepared, and everything went so smoothly. And the schedule was great. I love having the breaks. Everything was just, it went really, really well today. And I think it's going to be a really great school year. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Are you at work? Welcome. How's everybody doing?
Good.
I hope you love Prince as much as I love Prince. But I'm excited, and I hope you are too. We are making history together, and I can't think of anybody that I'd rather go through this with than each one of you.
It's to complete the school year as my best year out yet.
I had the best day of kindergarten. I can't believe it, and I am so excited.
Welcome to what? 5th period.
It wasn't too hard. Like, it was good. We just it was good.
Yeah, I'm excited too. What about you, Joshua? I'm also a language learner. I try to make it as easy as I can for you. So I'm pretty sure that you will learn and you will like it.
This year we're going to be learning a little bit about this bad boy right here, this basketball. Boom! Right? Maybe learn a little bit about soccer. See what you got.
Oh, okay. I like anime too, but there's a lot that I haven't seen yet. So maybe I could go check that out. And this fox is so cute. Yeah, like my dog Cooper, he has like 2 big ears as well. And they move a lot, which is funny. All right, thank you for sharing this.
For a number of years, since I was in 3rd grade, we have been using technology to help learn and understand things. It's not that hard. Teachers at my school have been making e-learning extremely fun. There are all these cool websites and things like Google Docs and Google Slides and Google Classroom that help us so much. We even have PE virtually and band and things like that, which I think is really amazing. And I really do look forward to returning to school using technology.
Now, when y'all hear me referring to Elmo, that is what I use right here. Okay, this is Elmo. Elmo is important. I need Elmo. Without Elmo, my e-learning is just all messed up. But with Elmo, oh yeah, e-learning is great. Okay?
It might be hard, it might be different, it might be challenging, but seize every opportunity that you're given this year. It's not always going to be peaches and cream, but trust that you are more than competent to win.
But I am so hopeful right now. It is going to be great. Once we get everything under control, by the end of the day, we got logged into our art class fine, and we started to get some assignments turned in. And so these, at this point, are still nervous, but happy tears. And I'm excited to see what our virtual learning journey will look like. I know that the Richland 2 family has totally got this. And I'm sure that I'm not the only teacher in Richland 2, in any school, in any grade level, that felt this way today. But know that we are a family and that we are all going to do this together.
See, that was easy, wasn't it?
It kind of was.
Boom. She just aced her first assignment. Good job, Catherine.
right, Dr. Shealy, we'll turn it over to you for phase 2 and questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory. I'd just like to remind the board that Dr. Davis at our last board meeting really helped us to better understand how fortunate we are to have our teachers in Richland too who are with us as family members. And you kind of hear my voice shaking a little bit because every time I watch that video, I get emotional because they are making history. We are making history for our children together, and they have stepped up and done their personal best, and we are so, so, so proud of them. So very quickly, I will remind you that when we are able to implement phase 2, our parents will have even more choices. We will have the R2 eSchool, K through 12, and always remind you that the eSchool is not new. It celebrated its 20th anniversary this year. What we've done is we've expanded it for to include K through 8. So a very special thank you to Dr. Manigo for all that she has done to bring to fruition our R2 eSchool. In phase 2, we'll have e-learning through communities for our K through 5th graders, and middle school and high school will transition into a choice of either staying with their e-learning, maintaining eSchool, or hybrid. The next 3 slides will very, very quickly give you some reminders of what that will look like. So remember, our classroom communities will be for our elementary schools 5 days a week. We'll push in RTI and our related arts. And our next 2 slides will remind you of what will happen on AABB days for middle and high schools. And Ms. Davis talked a little bit about how our special education children model will be different. I do want to remind you, as Libby brings up the last slide, that we are continuing to research and involve our teachers and our principals in making sure that when we do phase into phase 2, that we will do so in a seamless way. I want to conclude our presentation tonight by sharing with you something that was shared with us by one of our principals, one of our local physicians who has children in our school district. Right before LEAP started, shared this with her, and with permission, I'm sharing it with us tonight. The physician writes, I am sending peace, courage, gratitude, encouragement, and spirit this week. As my Prisma Health leadership reminds me every day, this is who we are. This is what we do. Let's make a difference and educate our children to change the world, be flexible, think outside the box, embrace change and challenges, and love one another enough to sacrifice to protect one another. Thank you so much for listening and for all who participated in our presentation tonight. Members of the board, Dr. Davis, we stand ready to answer questions.
Thank you all so much. Board members, Ms. Mackey.
Just thank you all. Thank you all for that comprehensive report. It just goes to show that there are so many moving parts to make it work, especially in a time like this. I can't go into each person's portion because I'd be here all night long, but all I can say is thank you in all caps. Bless you all, each of you who presented. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry. You have a hand up? Anybody? Ms. Agostini.
Thank you. I have a question on the special education phase 1, and it says face-to-face instruction daily from assigned special education teacher. I'm not sure if I missed it in the explanation, but I don't quite understand that, as our kids are not coming back to.
Which slide are you referring to?
Special education phase 1, it's not numbered, and it says face-to-face, 14 of 31, or right below it.
Yes, ma'am, it means that the special education students are just like our general ed students. They're getting face-to-face, meaning they're on their computers, they're getting instruction from their special education teacher. So there is not like a day that we're missing. It's equitable for them. So they're meeting with their teachers, following a consistent schedule, just like the other students within the school district.
Okay, so it's actually virtual or e-learning.
It's virtual face-to-face instruction, yes.
Okay. But not what I guess what we're using as common face-to-face as in person is, I have a couple of other questions, and I guess this is just because I keep getting emails, and this is more directed toward Dr. Davis. The board has received a number of emails, encouraging the board or asking the board to make decisions to move to a different phase. What has been the board's level, who's been deciding what phase we're going to, I guess? What has the board's involvement been in that?
I'm not really sure I understand. You not know that answer, or is that just I'm confused?
To remind the public, when the public is saying these emails to encourage or urge the board to make a motion or to move, who's making the decision of what phase we go from phase to phase? It's not a board decision. It's an that's what I'm.
Correct.
Okay. So it's an administration decision. It's not a board decision.
Correct.
Okay. And my other question would be, are we separating ourselves from Richland 1? We seem to be in line with them, but there are questions coming into the board. Are we going back when Richland 1 does, or is there a way to separate it so that, we can go on our own,
Ms. Agostini, we've never given any indication to anyone in our public that we were doing anything that Richland 1 was doing. I'm not understanding the question.
Okay.
So what would make you question whether or not we're waiting or how we're separating ourselves from Richland 1? Is that a specific question to a question coming from a specific person that emailed you about Richland 1? I can't speak on what Richland 1 is doing.
All right. Well, I believe I sent you a text from a constituent today that I sent with Mr. Shad, but there has been talk out in the community about the difference between separating the district, and that there seems to be an alignment between Richland 1 and Richland 2, and that they were the only two districts that, are doing all virtual. My question was, are we waiting for them? Are we doing this together on a decision based, or are we doing this autonomously, deciding when to go back to school?
Our decisions is based on Richland County numbers. I think the text message you sent me specifically asked about zip codes in Richland 1 versus zip codes in Richland 2. That has nothing to do with how we make a decision, or are we working with Richland 1 to make a decision or not. You were aware that we had sent our proposal to the State Department ahead of any other school district for a phased approach. Is that correct?
You told me after you submitted it, you announced it to the board at a Tuesday board meeting.
Right, but it was prior to anybody else sending in their phased approach. And so we didn't conspire or work with Richland 1 to develop our approach. We brought in individuals from around our school district and our community to help us develop our phase-in approach. And our phase-in approach, as stated numerous of times, has been based on the numbers that DHEC has shared with us, the incident rate, the trend in incident rate, and the percent positive rate. That's totally all our phase has been based on. I think when you and I spoke about it at one point, you said you supported that. That was the way that we were implementing our phases. However, you did have a desire to have given parents an option to vote, but you did support the phase. You did support the phased-in approach. So I'm not really sure what Richland 1 has to do with this at all. I've encouraged parents and members of our community to not get their information from Facebook or from their individual chat groups, that if they have any specific questions related to what we're doing, to reach out directly to school administration or district administration so that we can give them the correct information. And I will continue to ask them to do the same, and I'll continue to ask members of the board to do the same. Many of the information I think that's been shared, you have the answers to those questions. So it will be beneficial and helpful for us as a team to give the same answers regardless of where the questions are coming from.
So no, my question was, and you answered it, we're doing it independently. That was all that I was looking for. And I think it is important for us to publicly ask questions so that the public has the information that the board has and that the district has. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members? Dr. Elkins, you unmuted yourself. Does that mean you want to?
Absolutely not. But since I'm unmuted, I'll just say thank you to the team for a well-informed presentation. Thank you for all your hard work and continue. Understand why we're in phase one. So let's just continue to work and make sure that we keep our students, our teachers, and our family and community safe.
I would just say ditto. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Davis, Ms. Gregory, and oh, Dr. Davis, you have a comment? Or
yes, sir. I just wanted to kind of close the back to school. I know it's been kind of lengthy, but I did want to close the back to school report with some comments that I prepared as I've been thinking about where we are as a school district and what we're doing. And again, as I've stated multiple times, I'm super appreciative and so appreciative to the board. Number one, for having the courage to stand behind the superintendent. And I'll accept the responsibility for those individuals who emailed Ms. Agostini and other board members about the decision of going through the phases. I'll accept the responsibility of stating that I felt that this was an administrative and an operational decision, and that I needed the support of the board to ensure that our teachers and our students remain safe. And I appreciate the board members who have supported that decision. This decision is a tough decision, and as leaders, we have been either elected or appointed to make these hard decisions. And everybody's not going to agree with the decisions that we make, and just because we make them doesn't mean they're going to stop questioning the decisions that we make if it's not aligned to their beliefs or value systems or what they think is important at that given time. But I have to say to all of our students and teachers and employees and to our parents, as I stated last week, even the ones that don't agree with us, I do want to say thank you for making this new and different start of the school year a success, because I think it was a success. It was something that we've never done before. And unfortunately, there are a few people who will disagree with that, and I think they have the right to do so, and I respect their right. I would ask that they be respectful in their comments to our teachers, and I almost said my teachers because I feel a sense of responsibility for them, that they be careful, because these teachers are working extremely hard, and what they're doing is most times a little bit more difficult than what they would do brick and mortar. And so for them to make comments about it's failing, or comments about it's unsuccessful, or just really, just some derogatory comments, I think as superintendent and as leaders of this district, is our responsibility to step in front of those things and combat them, and not encourage people to do those types of things and say those types of things about our teachers, to our teachers, whether it's in an email, whether it's on a social media post or anything like that, because these teachers and these parents that are trying to make this work, and our students are working really, really hard. Our administrators, all of our support staff, regardless of what their roles are, these people are working hard to make this work. And it's and the decisions that we have to make based on the information that we have, and there is some information that we have that we're not ready to share with everybody. And that's and I know the board knows what I'm talking about, but we have to make some decisions that everybody may not be privy to, that helps us determine what's the best course of action to take for our students and for our teachers and for those individuals that we are responsible for. And so, as many of us in education know, the first few days of schools are always a little bit bumpy. But prior to this year, we've experienced dealing with these ups and downs, and we're able to bob and weave and work really quickly and seamlessly to solve a lot of problems. Like many of the other parts of our lives, this pandemic has given the start to the 2021 school year many challenges that we have faced before. However, I've been so impressed by how the Richland 2 family has remained calm, confident, positive, and courageous. To our family members who are we strongly implore us to return to in-person instruction as soon as possible. I need for you to understand, and please know that we hear you and that we are listening. We are listening to you, and in fact, I have spoken to several of them directly to share with them specifically and ask them specifically any questions that they answer any questions they may have about the decisions that we are making or have made. A common topic of my discussion with parents is about the possibility of setting a date for the start of phase 2. But based on our reopening plan, which was developed with a great deal of care and input and thought, we will move to phase 2 and of the disease activity when the disease activity calculation says so. And so just to remind parents, there are 3 things that we have to look at. Remind our public 3 things we have to look at. We have to look at the number of the incident rate and per 1,000 over 100,000 over the course of a 2-week period. And the incident rate, in order for us to move to moderate, has to be between 50 and 200 cases over a 2-week period. And we understand that there are some other factors that are being considered, other factors that are in fact impacting our numbers. But prior to the University of South Carolina's numbers, we still were above the 200 incidents per the 2-week period. So those are some decisions and some things that we have to continue to monitor. We also have to look at the trend in the incident rate, which had been trending down. That was one of the 3 areas that had been trending downwardly. And then the positive rate had been fluctuating, but we need to be between 5.1 and 9.9% to move to phase 2. And when we have a positive rate in the 20s and 30% percentiles, it doesn't present us with an opportunity to effectively and safely open schools. We know, so I definitely share all of this with our community to know, to just remind you all, we are going to continue to monitor these numbers. We are supposed to look at the numbers every 2 weeks. We have only been in school 6 days, six days. And so we're going to continue to monitor this. And we are just as our parents are, we are working extremely hard to try to get our students back in schools. But I've asked from the very beginning of this for a little bit of grace, a little bit of patience, a little bit of grit, in order for us to get this done. And we have to stay united as a district and as a family in order to make this work. It's not the best situation for everyone, but it's the safest situation for everyone. And I'm confident that even though it might not be the best, I am 100% confident that it's the safest situation for everyone right now. We don't know what's going on in each and individual's homes. Our responsibility is to provide our students with a premier educational experience in a safe and secure environment. We've always stressed safety and security in this district. We've never wavered from that. And so I'm just a little bit impassioned by that because it's important to me. And I can't speak for everyone, but I think I can speak for them. It's important for me that we have everybody intact when we get through this crisis. Everybody intact and able to continue with their quality of life. And it's just not happenstance or just frivolously just willing to risk that because of a little pressure or people disagree with us. And so again, I thank you all. I thank our board, and I thank our families, I thank our communities. I thank you all for continuing to show us a little bit of grace as we try to figure this thing out together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And now we will move to item 11.1, the draft agenda items for September 22nd, 2020 board meeting. Dr. Davis.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our viewing community, our draft agenda for September 22nd, we will begin our regular scheduled board meeting at 4:30 with our call to order. We'll then ask for a vote to go into executive session. Right now, currently, as on the draft items, we have for executive session, student appeals, student admission requests into the district's adult education program. After coming out of executive session, we will have our inspirational moment. We'll ask for the approval of that agenda, as well as we have something slated for special recognitions. We'll ask for the approval of our consent agenda, as well as public participation at 7.1. Our voting items will be our student appeals and student admission requests into the district's adult education program. New business, no action requested under item 9.1 will be the superintendent's back to school report. And I promise it will be brief. We'll have our capital improvement update. We'll ask for and review the agenda items for the October the 13th board meeting, and then ask for approval of that draft agenda. Public participation number 2, our board and superintendent comments, executive session 2 if needed, voting on executive session 2 items, and adjournment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Now we move to item 12.1, approval of the draft agenda for September 22nd, 2020.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey,
I move to approve the draft agenda items for September 22nd, 2020 at Richland 2 School Board meeting.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Dr. Holmes seconded it. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote.
The vote is 6-1.
Thank you. Motion carries. Now, item 13.1, our second public participation, Ms. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Shad. Forgive me if I'm going to read this one because I can't 100% more no, I think I stopped on this one, so I'm good. Okay. Sorry. Lauren Apple is our next participation. I would love for the school district to please reconsider opening the schools up for in-person learning. It would be super helpful to resurvey the currently involved students' parents, as it appears many of the parents who said they weren't comfortable sending their kids in are either now comfortable or are not even participating in virtual learning. Our teachers are amazing and have gone above and beyond to make this experience as successful as possible. However, being a mom of 3 elementary kids, is all doing e-learning and a 1-year-old at home, managing their school experiences and trying to work from home is nearly impossible each day. Beyond that, my kids are truly missing out on the educational experience we have grown to love and be grateful for at Richland 2. My kindergartner especially is struggling to connect and enjoy school. All 5-year-olds should love going to school, and he really would if he wasn't having to sit at a computer and stare at a screen. Beyond that, the constant screen time does nothing for my kids' temperaments, ability to sleep well at night, and focus during the day. It is just not beneficial for their little brains. If you all could please reconsider surveying parents and opening an option to get our students back in the classrooms for at least a few days a week, it would be the best thing for them and their education at this point. Thank you for your time. Jacqueline Carl. I do believe there should be an option for sending our kids to physical school. Currently, there are multiple programs to send our kids to that cost families $500 plus per month for them to sit with other school-aged kids but not receive any additional help, and football programs are going strong. My 3rd grader is stuck at home trying to learn over the activities of our 2 preschoolers. I had to take my 3-year-old out of preschool program because there is no way to get him to and from school while still having my 3rd grader at home to do his Zoom classes with attendance counting. All of my children are suffering from this, and we will move to a homeschool program if there is no change, so my kids can still participate in other enrichment programs and be able to conform all of our kids' needs rather than conform our preschooler and infant to the school's generic approach. I do think the school has forgotten that while the teacher is concerned for 30 kids, they have also asked that 30 families change their everyday schedules and lives to conform to each of their kids' teachers' schedules. Jennifer Hooks. I would like to implore the Richland 2 School Board to assess an earlier return to school option for the elementary students compared to the phased approach that is currently in place. My daughter attends Round Top Elementary. She has successfully attended LEAP and day 1 of MAP testing face-to-face at her school. She was so happy and engaged, and then sad that she could only be in her school for a few short hours. For these young children, there is no replacement for live teaching. The faculty has done an amazing job of the virtual instruction being provided, but I fear it is not sustainable for our teachers or these young students. As a parent, I want to be part of the solution so that the children who need face-to-face learning have that as an option. I am more than willing to volunteer time to help get classrooms ready, but what we must have is the board's approval that face-to-face can be an option so that work can be done. Lizel Baden. Dear Richland 2 trustees, I'm Lizel Baden, and my son William Baden has started 5th grade this year. He has been participating in virtual learning last week, but I doubt that he learned very much. My son has Angelman syndrome, which makes him nonverbal, cognitively delayed, and a very short attention span. These are the characteristics that make learning something through a computer screen almost impossible. He would be best served by the district if he can have hands-on, eye-to-eye contact with people trained to teach my child. I am not that person. He lost half a year of learning at the end of 2019-2020 school year. I don't want him to lose another half a year to 1 year of learning this year. His windows of opportunities to learn skills are closing, and that is not fair to him. Please use your elected authority to make a motion for in-person instruction for these most at-risk kids in special education. This upholds civil and educational rights for the kids in your district. This protects these Richland 2 children from discrimination. This is simply the right thing to do. Gratefully, Lizel Baden. Teresa Webb. I just want to put my 2 cents in. I had to pull my children from your school district due to racism, both the elementary and the middle school that my children attended. Not one single person at either school took it serious when my children were being called racial slurs or thrown into bathroom stalls. We were told that due to a teacher shortage that my daughter would have to leave the classroom when a certain teacher was the sub that day. So she had to miss educational time because of a teacher shortage after repeatedly called her deaf and dumb. My son's elementary school kept saying that it had taken care of, but every day my son would come home and tell me he was called racial slurs. He got to the point he stopped telling me because not one adult in that school would do anything about it. There is a serious problem on this district, and I know my children are not the only white children that went through this. It's sad that as adults and parents we have to explain to our children why the school is not protecting them. Why as a parent we have to be told our children have to miss instruction time because of a teacher shortage. Bryant Smith. My son is in kindergarten. Let me start with gratitude towards his teacher who is doing the best she can given the circumstances. However, I feel my son's education is having a major negative impact by taking place virtually. There is a ridiculous amount of time wasted on connections, screen sharing, and technical issues. He is not learning school and class procedures, and despite our best efforts at home, he is constantly zoning out or getting off task with no way for the teacher to know and be able to redirect him. We are doing our best due to other children in the home who are not school age. We can't sit with him during every moment of virtual learning to stay on task. By the time we get back in person and countless instructional minutes have been wasted, we will be at square one with learning how to go about the day in person. We spent the whole first week learning a schedule and routine at home just to have it completely scrapped on week 2 for testing. I respect that not everyone feels comfortable being face-to-face at this time, but for my child, I would appreciate the option without having to leave the district that we live in. A.J. Collin. Dear Sir, Madam, as a parent of special needs children with Down syndrome, I feel there is an even greater need for my child to go back to face-to-face learning. As much as the school district has tried virtual learning, my child has found it extremely difficult to concentrate and understand virtual learning. She cannot log on or navigate the Chromebook by herself. Her self-esteem and confidence is not the same and regressed. Her social and communication skills and ability to read and write independently have declined. She gets frustrated and is getting screen fatigue very quickly. The special needs classrooms are self-contained with small groups with her, which helps her engage well in this setting. I believe if a plan is made towards getting them back to school, some of her skills can be readdressed and worked on more productively. Whilst we understand that these are unprecedented times, the need for children receiving special education in person is of the utmost importance and necessary for their development and well-being. We have read that schools in Columbia County, Evans, Georgia, received full special education services attending 5 school days per week since August 24th. We have called the Columbia County School District at 706-541-0650, and they have confirmed this. Can the Richland 2 District engage with them to see what blueprint they use and what work towards opening up services for our children? Thank you, A.J. Collin. Jean Pierce. Dear Richland 2 trustees, my son McLean has been a student in Richland 2 since 2014. McLean suffers from autism spectrum disorder and has found past success in the autism program at Polo Road Elementary. We are excited about his future at E.L. Wright Middle School. As the 2020-21 school year has gotten underway, it has become clear that McLean will not be able to receive an appropriate education via the virtual model. When receiving instruction in person, McLean is very engaged and regularly participates in classroom discussions. Virtual school has caused McLean to withdraw and his skills, both academic and social, to rapidly regress. Furthermore, the virtual model does not provide the additional supports and therapies that McLean needs to be successful. Finally, the goals set forth in McLean's IEP cannot be worked towards nor met while receiving his education virtually. This past week, school boards across the nation who are in virtual-only models for general education have begun reopening their buildings for kids like McLean because they realize that this is the only way to offer appropriate education for some. School districts in Newark, Fairbanks, and even South Carolina's own Beaufort County District made the news for allowing their most at-risk kids back into the classroom. District leaders outlined how these children cannot receive an appropriate education through virtual learning. I strongly urge you to use your elected authority to make a motion for in-person instruction for these most at-risk kids. This upholds civil and educational rights for the kids in your district and protects these children from discrimination. These children are counting on you to make critical decisions that will provide them with the same opportunities for successes that all other children receive. Thank you. Regards, Jean Pierce. Jill S. I would like to know how many of the board members sat down with their first grader and watched a day's class. I would like to know who through thought Google Classroom was suitable for a first grader to use. I would happily have someone come to my home for a day to experience it from a child's viewpoint. It's wonderful while the teacher is teaching, but when links need to be accessed or schoolwork needs to be submitted, it's extremely difficult for the kids. I'm blessed to be a stay-at-home mom, but having a 1, 2, and 4-year-old makes it hard to constantly help my first grader. My heart breaks for the kids in classes that struggle due to having no adult helping them. Our class is truly blessed with an amazing teacher who goes over and over again how to use the system. My daughter, who has always loved school, now dreads sitting in front of her computer all day. Every morning she cries wanting to go back to normal school. What will the long-term effect be on these kids losing out on the social skills and interactions with others? Rebecca Paulo. Hello, I have a son in kindergarten and a daughter in second grade who are both enrolled in e-learning. While both of the teachers are going above and beyond to make this challenging classroom setting work, it is becoming increasingly apparent that absolutely nothing compares to in-person learning. Our children are missing out on an imperative developmental time, socially, mentally, emotionally, and physically. E-learning is simply unhealthy for our young children. The sooner our kids can get back in the classroom, the better for their health, their education, and their future. Thank you. Jennifer Meadows. Something has to be done about the technology aspect of virtual learning. Although I wish my kids could return to class a few days a week, I am not completely opposed to some sort of virtual learning. However, this current platform of PowerPoint, Google Slides, where my second grader is expected to know how to copy, paste, click, drag, and create text boxes is a nightmare. The content is fine and he can easily verbalize the answer to me, but then it takes no less than 10 to 15 minutes to figure out the technology piece to submit it. We need a new platform for our kids, or the kids should return to class. Corinne Matthews. Please consider in-person education for special needs children. My son Nick is in special education and he needs in-person instruction. Virtual is not working for him. He also receives physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy at school. There's no way he can do these virtually. These therapies are in his IEP. I will not consent to telehealth services for therapies. That is just ridiculous. Why is it that sports are happening but we can't do in-person learning for special education students? Seriously, why are sports happening? Beaufort County is doing in-person services for special ed. Maybe follow their lead. It can be done safely. Virtual school for special education is a joke. And that concludes the public comments for this evening, Mr. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. Now we'll move to item 14.1, board and superintendent comments. And let me start at the top. Dr. Holmes.
Okay, good evening. I was listening to all the comments and the other things that were said this evening. I would like to, as a board member, I would just like the public to know that these are very, very difficult decisions to make when it comes to the safety of not just the students, but the teachers and everybody else involved. None of us take these decisions lightly. And as Dr. Davis kind of mentioned before, there are a lot of aspects that are yet to be made known to the general public that come into play. I think I heard a comment that was on one of the letters, I believe it was, that says the disease is mostly survivable. My question would be, what if your person or your child or your child's teacher or your child's friend or student that you know is one of the ones that's not the survivable one? Would the aspect of mostly survivable still hold the same impact for you? And sitting in this seat, we have to look at not just mostly survivable, but survivable for as many and the masses as possible. Again, because I'm a former special ed teacher, I really do understand the special ed aspect, and maybe that's something that can be looked at a little differently. But at this time, I cannot, the mostly survivable comment sticks in my head because I don't know how I would feel if it was my child's teacher, that was one of the ones that did not survive. I don't think we should risk people's lives. I understand, I really do. But when you can use a term mostly survivable, I think we should be saying that it's survivable. And thank you to everybody who's done an excellent report tonight. I appreciate the hard work. I have to say our district has worked tremendously hard to put all kind of steps in place. Is it perfect? No. But is it good? Yes. And especially in comparison to other places. And I would just like to thank everybody, the whole team, Dr. Davis, parents, teachers, and just know that we don't take it lightly. We understand. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Dr. Elkins.
Just want to say thank you to all of those who presented tonight. Thank you for your detailed presentations. Thank you for giving parents the opportunity to see where we are and where we're going. I want to say also to our parents who submitted the letters tonight, we hear you. We are still working. We've only been in school for 6 days. Allow our superintendent and his staff to continuously research, look at the data, and then see how we can move forward. But I want you to know that we hear you, and we're going to do our best to get our kids back face to face when the situation is safer for our entire staff, our students, and our community. Dr. Davis, just want to say thank you for your hard work. Thank you for what you and your team are doing, because it's not an easy job, and I understand that. So just thank you for everyone in the district that's working together to make sure that our community is safe, our schools are safe, our teachers and our kids are safe. So again, continue to stay safe and wear your mask.
Thank you, Dr. Elkins. Ms. Agostini.
Sorry, I had to unmute. First, I want to thank all of the presenters tonight and thank the teachers and the district employees for making the best of a very challenging situation this past week. Also, thank you to all of our constituents, to all the people that have reached out to us through emails, phone calls, and to all of you who have participated in our public participation tonight. Similar to many of you, I have a daughter that is dyslexic and ADHD. She has had to defer her freshman year of college because she cannot do virtual learning. So I understand where you're coming from, and I really appreciate you expressing your concerns. I too hope we're back in school sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to echo my other board members. The board and administration are listening and making every effort to return back to school safely. The safety of all students, all staff, not just our teachers, but all the bus drivers, the other support staff that are in our buildings every day. All of those folks matter, and we are continually looking at the data, continuing to find ways. The implication that Richland 1 or Richland 2 are somehow tied together at the help, I don't know where that came from. I feel like Dr. Davis and Richland 2 and our staff has been out in front on this issue, and we're making our own decisions, certainly with guidance from many folks. But we are independent and making our decisions independently. We obviously, this is not perfect. There's a lot of issues, and we're continuing to work through those. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Dr. Caution Parker.
First, I'd like to just say I was very impressed. The outstanding academic report, like Dr. Shealy, kind of brought tears to my eyes. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Ms. Williams, only 4 vacancies. That is a phenomenal record. We probably will never have again, but it is a fantastic record for all of us. And Dr. Davis, I'd like to encourage you and your team to continue to do the good work and keep moving forward, regardless. Keep moving forward. I would just like to say to the parents that made the comments, it sounds like to me, and this is just my opinion, that this has been a coordinated effort by someone to just bring all this at one time to present to our board and to present to our superintendent. I would encourage you, I would urge you, I beg you, pick up the phone, call the superintendent and talk to him one-on-one without listening to anybody else out there saying this, saying that, or their opinions. Get the facts, get all of the facts. And please understand, we have to look at Richland too as an entire community, not certain sections. And just like you've made your points this evening about face-to-face learning, believe me when I tell you, we've got just as many and more parents on the other side that like things just the way they are, just the way we're handling it. And what we have to do is look at the district as a whole. And that, I believe with all my heart and soul, is what Dr. Davis and his team are doing. Please, when you get these nasty emails and these ugly comments like you need to resign and all this, that's a bunch of crud. That's a bunch of crud. And no one's going to pay attention to that. You need to talk directly with Dr. Davis and get the facts. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echoing the sentiments of some of my board members, so I won't be redundant. But thank you for the people who tune in tonight, the people who called to get information, who send information, who watch these board meetings, just like you're sitting in a board meeting room on Tuesday nights previously. You're still taking time to be informed by tuning into these videos, and I appreciate you. I want to say something for the people who are calling and writing and contact us directly. Thank you for that. And I want to say something. I'm a board member. We set policy, and by default we represent 29,000 students at Richland too. But personally, I am a parent. I have children. I have children that I have raised. And when I read emails and I think about people's concerns, I think about my own children. My mom is a teacher, career educator. When I look at teachers, I look at her. I think about my own situation, not to a point of special interest where I get mad if I can't have my way and vote against something because it doesn't affect my, because I don't like the way it affects my household. I don't mean in a special interest sort of way, but I can't look at our students without seeing my own children. I can't look at our teachers without seeing my mother or other people that I love and care for. Dr. Davis said something on a panel that he was on weeks ago, and he alluded to that tonight as well. He said that he wants to finish the school year with the same people he started with. Now that's not always possible. People may move away or other things may happen, but he didn't want a decision that he makes to impact the health of a teacher, of a bus driver, of an employee of Richland 2, or of our students. So with regard to COVID, this is a temporary situation. This is not going to be forever. This is not something that we're not, locking our doors and barring your students to be educated. We're doing the best we can. It's not a perfect situation. COVID is not a perfect situation. When I look at the numbers of deaths that we have in the nation right now, 6,324,042 cases, 189,538 deaths. This is the reality we're living in. We're in the midst of a pandemic. Because we can wear masks and move about safely and buy groceries and go to the store and do things that we think are safe with caution, I think sometimes may give us a false sense of security. But we are in the midst of a deadly pandemic, and the decisions that we're making are to keep our students safe, all of them, to keep our teachers safe, all of them. Face to face instruction right now, without knowing that we are in a safe zone, is as a potential to impact somebody's life. I wouldn't want it to be my child's life. I've got 2 children. I wouldn't want it to be either one of them. I wouldn't want it to be my mother's or other friends or loved ones. And our teachers, I care for them as if they are my family and my loved ones, and other people's students and children. When I look at them, I see my students. So I pray that you will just bear with us and give us a little bit longer. One of the caveats we have is that every 2 weeks we review the numbers, and we're not making up the numbers. These are coming from the State Department of Education, from the CDC. These are not our numbers. Every day I watch the news knowing that, our world could change on a dime. Every day something changes with regard to this. So please don't think that we're discounting parents. I'm a parent. So, although I try, I wear a different hat for school board, at the beginning and end of the day, I'm somebody's parent. And so I just pray that people will be patient with us. Please know that we're trying to keep our community safe. This is a temporary situation. My heart bleeds for students who are struggling with technology and issues like that. We are doing the very best we can. It is not a perfect situation because COVID-19 is not perfect, and COVID-19 has taken away so many choices that we would have had before. But I pray that you continue to bear with us. And just I thank the administration for doing the absolute best they can under an absolute very bad, terrible. There's a children's book, Gregory and the Very Bad, Terrible, Awful, No Good Day. This is a very bad, terrible, awful, no good situation, and we're trying our best to make the best of it. But y'all be blessed, and thank you all for the part you play in trying to impact the life of a child in Richland 2. Y'all have a good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our viewing community. There's a little bit of information about free meals that you probably have seen, and I want to thank the members of our community who I saw last board meeting when I asked them to join us in our efforts to petition the USDA to extend a waiver. I saw several members of our community take up that mantle and agree to, along with our board, members of our board who also reached out, whether it's signing a petition or whatever, to take up that mantle to press the USDA to extend a waiver for our students, for all students. And so that waiver was granted, and so we were able to feed all of our students up till December the 31st. So Richland 2 is able to provide free meals for all students. The USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced on August the 31st that the extending waivers that will allow school districts to serve free meals. All sites, curbside, and community are open to all Richland 2 students. Meals for Monday and Tuesday are distributed on Monday. Meals for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are distributed on Wednesday. And so please check the district's website for details on meal sites and service times. As a reminder, schools and district front office are open to the public during normal business hours. Please note that the lobby of R2I2 remains closed to the general public. Only individuals who need to see district staff will be permitted into R2I2. Please feel free to give us a call and make an appointment if you need to see anyone here in this office. We're available to our public. If you haven't seen the tweet, we retweeted out something that Spring Valley High School shared, which is exciting and exceptional news. The Spring Valley High School has been named a top 20 national magnet school of excellence by Magnet Schools of America. Being a national magnet school of excellence merit award winner, not only ranks Spring Valley among the best magnet schools in the country, but it gives the school a chance to win the Dr. Donald P. Simpson Award. The Ronald P. Simpson School of Excellence Award is considered the most prestigious award for magnet schools in the nation, and includes a $5,000 cash award. So Spring Valley, as you know, offers 2 exceptional magnet learning opportunities, experiences for our students, discovery and explorations. In the category of best and brightest, Our district has 2 honorees being featured in Columbia Business Monthly 2021 Best and Brightest 35 and Under publication. Jackson Creek Elementary school teacher Volante Gibson and Joseph Kills Elementary School assistant principal Dr. Whitney L. Powell are highlighted in the special edition of the magazine that is distributed in Columbia, Greenville, Charleston areas. The magazine is coming out this month. We have a few national track stars in our midst, a part of our Richland 2 family. Richland 2 has some young national track stars who haven't even seen their 13th birthday. Paris Asman, Peyton Hightower, and Madison Ross and Olivia Taylor became the youngest group of females from South Carolina to win a national championship in the 4x400 amateur athletic union relay race, better known as AAU, back in August. Ross is a 6th grader, and 7th graders Asman and Taylor attend Blythewood Middle. Hightower is a 6th grader at Keller Mill Middle School. The group is a part of the Team Blaze Track Club of Columbia, and the 1920 season marks the first year that this group ran together as a relay team. So that's an exceptional accomplishment for those young ladies. They're exceptional athletes as well as, most importantly, exceptional students. And then the last information is regarding the census. It remains vitally important that everyone is counted in the 2020 census. Recent reports show that the number of people counted in Richland County is below the levels of the last census. Big decisions are based on the number of people counted in the census, such as federal funding for schools, school lunch programs, funding for libraries, hospitals, and fire stations. And if you have not completed your census count, please do so today by going to 2020census.gov, 2020census.gov. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you, fellow board members, for your comments. Thank you all for the reports from the administration. Obviously these are tough choices that are being made. They're not always going to be pleasing to every single person. I do agree with the phases, which are based on science, which is based on the surveys that we had in the past, which is based on the Accelerate Ed task force and the guidance that they gave to us, with the guidance from DHEC, from CDC, and frankly, even with the media reports. There have been comments that have been made with regard to, this deadly virus is really only impacting older folks or folks with that have immune issues and pre-existing issues. Well, a lot of those folks are our parents. A lot of those folks are our grandparents, the caregivers for these children. Frankly, in my opinion, the reason that the children have not been impacted as much is because we had the shutdown in March. And so they were not in spaces where that could occur. Again, in my opinion, how do we know this? Because the colleges are back in, and we're seeing all across the country. I think yesterday was 17,000 college students that were, never mind the adults changing their behavior. The college students have not been doing that. We've seen some of those images. Schools are back to some extent in certain areas face-to-face. DHEC has actually released some numbers now. And just one of the most recent ones is that we now have 233 total COVID cases in the schools. 138 of them are students. 95 of them are teachers. That's up from just last Friday, where it was a total of 158. I applaud the district based on the science, based on the guidance that has been talked about already, that we would do the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. We are all hopeful that phase 2 will occur as soon as possible. But the only way that will happen is if, as a community, we change our behavior. As a community, we wear our mask, we abide by the hygiene, and that we physically distance. We have seen what happens when that does not occur. If we want our children back in school, as adults, we need to set the example, in my humble opinion. But we don't even agree whether that is the case, whether we should wear masks or whether we should physically distance or whether this is real or not. And, you know, it grieves me to hear the comments and read the comments from certain parents who are having challenges. And I understand there are challenges. At the same time, I'm inspired by the video that we saw and also other emails and text messages that we get as board members with regard to parents speaking on their children's behalf, and frankly from teachers, that we are putting safety first. We are doing what we can to educate in this climate. We hope that the climate is going to change so that we can get back to in-person teaching and learning. The teachers miss their students, and the students miss their teachers and want to see their teachers and give the hugs and all of that. But the enemy has stopped that. So I would encourage us not to be part of what the enemy is doing. Let's continue to stay together as much as we can. Let's continue to promote what we have been guided by in terms of stopping this spread, model the behavior for our children, and continue to give grace that we would like to receive as well. Y'all have well, that's the end of my comments. And so now we will go to, we don't have any executive session items for 16.1, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Mackey.
I move to adjourn the September 8th, 2020 Board of Trustees meeting of Richland 2.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Agostini. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, you can register your vote. It's on our device.
Oh, never mind. I gotta pop up. Never mind.
Mr. Chair, I got off my device. I vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
Same here. Just want to make sure you got that right.
Thank you, Dr. Carson Parker.
Okay, the vote is 7-0.
Thank you. The motion carries. The meeting is now adjourned. You all have a good and safe evening and rest of the week.